Hi, my name is Roman Nahanicki. Welcome to the Custom Objects Crash Course video series, video number 2. This is our intermediate video, getting you exposed to everything you need to know about HubSpot custom objects. Joining us today, we have Dylan Sellberg from HubSpot and Daniel Lynton from Lynton. Thank you both for joining us. Appreciate you taking the time to do this today. We talked a lot about kind of the basics of custom objects in our first video. Now we're going to kind of go down another level and talk about introducing custom objects to your team and how to use them. So Daniel, if you could kind of talk about, how you approach this with a team and a client and how you start to use custom objects, that I think that would be helpful for us.
Sure, Raman. Well, the object might be custom, but it shows up in HubSpot natively, just like any other object. So it's really easy to introduce users to custom objects once they're created and published. So by clicking on this contacts dropdown, I can then switch to one of my custom objects like loans. And I get the same user experience to view and filter my records here on the list view. And I can click into any record and see a timeline view, just like if I were in a contact, deal, or company record. So it's very easy to train users and roll out custom objects, customize the views, for example, the properties that display here on the left pane, and the associations between your custom object and other objects here on the right, including, in this case, I have a custom object association and a native contact association. So really it's a matter of creating the object, defining all of your properties and relationships, rolling it out to users and training users on how to use it. Depends on your use case, whether you're syncing data into the custom object or, as Kyle said in video 1, if HubSpot's the system of record and your users are entering data into it, helping your users understand the use case for that object, when they should be creating a record, and associating that record with other HubSpot objects. And then, of course, there are the reports, the ability to create custom object records from workflows. So it goes much beyond this CRM screen that I'm on today. But I just wanted to share my screen to show really how a custom object looks and feels just like any other native object in HubSpot.
That's great, and that's kudos to HubSpot for thinking about that and integrating custom objects into the UI very elegantly. So we talked a little bit about knowing, is it a custom object or is it a custom property? Looking at the data that you have. And Dylan, I asked you this, how do you know if you should be taking existing data in your CRM, if you've been storing it in kind of a weird way, like location, for example, you have multiple locations, and migrating it to a custom object? So talk us through, if you will, kind of that process that you'd need to kind of think through.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll start here with the recommendation. If you have not seen the beginner video or the basic video that we just put out around custom objects, be sure to watch that. Kyle Jepson goes into some great detail about how you know if you need a custom object. And so that's definitely foundational, right? Let's say you've kind of confirmed you need a custom object and it's time to consider the migration, right? We've made it pretty easy in HubSpot to move data between an existing object, depending on kind of where it sits, into something new. And so the first step obviously is going to be to create the shell for this new custom object you're looking to define. The second thing you'll want to do is export the data out of wherever it lives today. From what we've seen, that's likely you've either kind of hacked a ticket pipeline or a deal pipeline and you're representing something in a way that's like atypical, or it's not a deal or not a ticket. Or you're using properties on a different object, like the company's object in a locations case. So you'll want to get that data out of HubSpot. Don't delete it yet, just export it out. So now that you've got all this data exported out of HubSpot, you can hop into our import tool and import the data into the custom object you've just defined. My favorite thing about custom objects is how similar and really identical it is to the rest of the platform. So if you've ever used our import tool before, importing custom object data will be just the same. So you kind of hop into HubSpot, import that data. Now, keep in mind, like at this stage, you probably have duplicative data. You have it stored originally where it was, and now you have it represented as a new custom object. I'd recommend going through the account, making sure everything's lining up, finding out where the gaps are, maybe what data you missed, maybe what things you need to move over in a different way, or maybe things that need to be deleted. This is a good opportunity for general database cleanup as a whole. And then once you feel like things have moved to a good direction and you're ready to kind of move forward with using the custom object, you can go ahead and delete the old data that was stored in an incorrect way, because now you've migrated it over to a custom object and you're ready to start using custom objects in HubSpot.
Great, thank you for that step-by-step. Dylan, a follow-up question on that. So you're an admin in your HubSpot CRM, and once you've created your custom object using the custom object API, what are the steps that you take to getting that object appropriately set up in the UI?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question, and I'll highlight some of the things that you'll need to do immediately. Now, keeping in mind, database setup and architecting your CRM to meet your reps' needs and what your team needs is an evolving process. So the steps I'm about to outline are not complete in any way, because it will never be complete, but some of the first steps to think about once you've created that custom object. So the first thing I'll do is share my screen here. And you might be wondering why I'm not in the HubSpot UI and why I'm on developers.hubspot.com. If you're feeling any nerves or any, if you're trepidatious at all about, doing this, really architecting custom objects in a live instance of HubSpot, maybe that you've got reps around the globe working in at all hours, you can always create a developer account, developers.hubspot.com, and try this on for size, right? Custom objects will work similarly in there. If you want to just, increase your degree of confidence, this is a great place to start. However, I know there are a lot of folks who just feel ready to rock and want to get things moving inside of HubSpot. So I will show you the first couple steps here. The first thing you'll want to do is, when you use the API, you're going to define which objects the custom object is associated with. You want to just make sure things tied up exactly like you wanted it to. So you'll want to visit a custom object record. Here I am on a subscriptions object, which is a custom object in this hub. And I'm just making sure, okay, so I associate with companies, deals, contacts, tickets, services, which is another custom object in the tablet. So just make sure your associations have linked up correctly, because that will be foundational in getting the data structure in the right place. You can also do this in the reverse. So here I am on a company record, and you can see I've got my subscriptions object down here. So looks like my associations have been defined properly. The next thing you'll want to do is create properties. So when you create a custom object, we're going to create a handful of properties out of the box for you, just like we would for any other object. But you can go into properties settings here. You'll notice your custom objects kind of flow in right where you'd expect them to be. And you'll want to create the properties that you need to store data on for your custom object. Because you're not going to want to continue this migration and continually having to build properties, write data, build properties, write data. Try to get this all done from the start and structure your properties as you need. You'll also want to set up your cards on the right-hand sidebar of the record and the left-hand sidebar of the record in records customization. So if you visit that tab, we're still in property settings. You can see your object type, subscriptions. You can start with the left sidebar. So by default, we're going to put every single property in the left-hand sidebar, and that might be a lot. So you can edit this view and create a custom view with certain properties that your team needs front and center. Obviously, these properties aren't going anywhere, but these are just the ones you'll want to surface up to the record itself. And then the second thing you'll want to do is configure the association cards. Now, the association cards show on the right-hand side of the record. I kind of demoed that earlier. You'll be doing a bit of this at object setup, but just make sure that your secondary properties are defined to what you need them to be, because this will be the front and center data that users in your hub are consuming on the custom object. So set up your subscriptions cards, all that good stuff. And then the final thing you'll want to do is make sure when somebody's creating a custom object record that they're inputting the right data. So I'm going to hop back to this HubSpot record here. And when I click add, you'll notice it's asking me for a few properties. If you want to change the properties that are shown here, click edit this form, and we'll hop you into the form editor for the object creation experience. As of right now, that is the only way to get into the form editor, but this is something our team's actively working on. So I would imagine that maybe the time this video is published, there's also a way to access that from the property settings that I showed earlier. But for now, just click that edit this form button, set that part up. And then your final step is to run an import. Take all that data that you've got stored elsewhere, if you do have this data stored elsewhere and you're not starting from scratch, and import the data just as you would any other object. So you can see your custom objects are defined here by this blank box image. You can go in, select the custom objects you need. You can run a multi-file import. You can do anything like that. Run the import as you are used to and as you've been doing for a HubSpot import, and you're off to the races. So those are the first things I'd recommend when it comes to setting up a custom object. And again, it's a never-ending process, right? You're always going to need to be revisiting your database and your architecture to make sure that it's working for your team. But those are a couple good first steps.
Great, thanks, Dylan. What I love about that, and I'll highlight, is that you could see how tightly a custom object is integrated into the HubSpot UI. It's just like working with a standard object, and kudos to HubSpot for making that very seamless. So let's kind of think about another scenario where you may not have an admin or a technical person, and you don't necessarily want to work with, or you're not familiar with HubSpot's API. You know, what then? And you realize that you need a custom object, but you may not have the technical expertise to kind of set that up. And Daniel, I'll ask you to kind of talk about that and recommend a potential solution for that.
Sure. Well, I still recommend Dylan's great advice of creating a developer portal and using that for your testing and sandbox of spinning up your custom object before you put it into production. But if you don't have a developer, or you're uncomfortable using the HubSpot Custom Objects API, we do have a free app in the marketplace, Custom Objects HQ. It's a one-click install, and we'll take you through a simple wizard to create and update your custom object definition. So this will get you up and running quickly with any new custom object you want to create, as well as the ability to update. So you can choose your label names, which object associations you want to set, primary and secondary display properties, required properties and searchable properties. And once you've created your custom object, you can very easily access the properties for that object through this click in our app. So you create your object, and now you can go straight to your property editor to add and edit properties on that object. So Custom Objects HQ is free, makes it quick and easy if you don't have access to an API developer.
Great, thank you for that. Super useful. Custom Objects HQ. All right, that does it for our intermediate video number 2. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Dylan, and thank you, Daniel, for your expertise and for sharing everything that you did. We're going to be back with a video 3 on our Custom Objects Crash Course series. It's going to get more into detail around workflows and errors and additional reporting. So please watch for that. If you haven't watched video number 1, please do that, and it'll give you even more context for this video number 2. So thank you, and see you again next time.